Hello? Peter, can you all hear me?
We're going to start.
You cannot hear me.
They can't hear you.
Can you hear me? Yes. Yes? Okay, great. Okay. Yeah, we'd like to start the meeting now, if that's good. Good evening. My name is Laura Dorfman. I'm the co-chair of the Community Preservation Committee. This is the March 20th, 24 meeting of the committee. First, I'll confirm the presence of our committee members. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Maureen Callahan.
Yes.
Reg Foster.
Here.
Jim Rosenbaum. Do we hear from Jim? Is Jim online? Okay. Dave, how are you?
Here.
Jean McKnight,
Here.
Paul Dawson,
Here.
Keith LaFace.
Keith will be here, just slightly.
Okay. Laura Dorfman, chair is here. Joe Barnes. Is Joe online? Okay. For this meeting, the CPC is convening live and on the Zoom app. Information on the link to this meeting can be found on the town's website. The first item on the agenda is the public hearing. I move to open the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Can we do it that way? Yes, okay. This is our public hearing on the pending application submitted to the CPC for funding for FY 2025. Most of you are familiar with the CPC and the process involved in funding CPC applications. The Community Preservation Act is a funding mechanism for participating towns to award grants to applicants which support affordable and community housing, preservation or restoration of historic resources, acquisition and preservation of open space, and restoration and investment in recreational resources. CPA funds are generated from a property tax surcharge in Needham of 2%. The state provides matching funds, not dollar for dollar, based on revenue generated from registry recording fees. Each year at town meeting, CPC funds are appropriated based on recommendations made by the CPC to town meeting. The CPC votes on whether to recommend funding for the application to the town meeting. Town meeting then votes on whether to accept or reject the recommendation for funding. Prior to the CPC's vote on whether to recommend funding, the CPC assigns a liaison to work with the applicant. The CPC conducts due diligence on the request. CPC consults with the Select Board, the Finance Committee, and the CPC seeks input from the public on the applications. This is an opportunity for the public to provide input on each of the 3 applications for funding, as well as likely requests that will come before town meeting from the CPC to double the funding of the Community Housing Reserve Fund, with a goal of having 20% of CPC receipts appropriated to Community Housing Reserve rather than the statutory requirement of 10%. The first application is for the Linden Street redevelopment construction project. I am the liaison.
And I just want to note our co-chair is
Oh,
joining the
hi,
meeting
Joe.
here for the record here.
Hi, Joe. The Linden Street redevelopment project, actually, before I do that, let me finish this part. Here's how we're going to proceed. With respect to each application, a CPC member who's one of the liaisons for the application will introduce the application. A representative of the applicant will make a short presentation, 7 to 10 minutes. With respect to each application, we will have public comments and questions. All speakers should state their name and address for the record. Please address your remarks to the chair as opposed to back and forth with others in the room. So that everyone can have an opportunity to speak, please limit your remarks to 2 to 3 minutes, and please be concise in your remarks. With that in mind, you can speak once on an application, and if you wish to speak again, we will return to you only after everyone else has had an opportunity to speak. New information and your own personal knowledge and observations are helpful to the committee. It is not necessary to repeat what's already been said. It's perfectly acceptable to say, "I agree with the previous speaker." That's not a waste of time, it's effective, and is your way of petitioning the government, which is a valued principle of our representative democracy. We sometimes receive email communications from community members regarding pending applications for funding. The CPC staff distributes those emails to the committee. That's another effective way of communicating your opinions. Sometimes people ask questions in their remarks. Direct your questions to me, the chair, or to Joe, the co-chair. In general, we won't answer those questions as they come up, but we'll note them and ask staff or others to respond to the questions that have been asked once everyone has had a chance to speak. Now, I would like to introduce Reg Foster, Chair of the NHA and member of CPC, who's going to present a summary of the Linden Chambers redevelopment construction project. I'll just give a quick little overview, Reg, if that's okay.
And I'm just moving here, so.
Yep.
my-
Needham Housing Authority is requesting $5.5 million for construction costs associated with the redevelopment of affordable public housing under the CPA category of community housing. The NHA currently provides 72 affordable public housing units for elderly or disabled households at its Linden Street site. The NHA is seeking CPA funding for construction costs associated with the redevelopment of the 72 existing units, plus the creation of 64 new units at that location. Now, I'd like to turn it over to Reg.
Great, can you pull up the presentation?
Yes, I can. And I did promote Margaret as a panelist for the event.
Okay,
And she's speaking tonight.
she's not speaking, but she's here if there are any questions here, though. So next slide, and that slide is really the slide that Laura just spoke to. The only additional item on it is at the bottom, there's a link that goes to a repository that has a boatload of information in it that the CPC has collected during their due diligence period of this winter. And I'll just give myself my 10-minute timer here, and we'll see how we do. Next slide, please. Just in case some of the people at this hearing don't know where the Linden Street development is, the big red arrow is pointing at it, and I brought a pointer somewhere in here because it's hard to point at the screen here. So there it is, right there, this area here. And just to orient everybody, this is the sort of Needham Junction train station. There's the McDonald's, here's the hospital up here. Oak Street runs right down here. And across the street from us is the High Rock Middle School and playing fields that I think a lot of people are familiar with here. Next slide, please. So unfortunately, this is rotated 90 degrees from the previous slide because it's a long and skinny site, and there's only way we can get it on the slide is sideways this way. So North and Oak Street is up to our right, and over here is Roach Brothers, and here's the High Rock Middle School in the field. So our site currently is about 11 acres. About half of it's occupied with the Linden Street development, and that was developed in the early 60s to the early 70s, and has 18 buildings on that site. If we go to that next slide, there are 72 studio apartment units on it. They are severely undersized. They lack accessibility. More than 50% of our residents live on the second floor, and there are no elevators, and they're elderly, so, you know, this is not good. They are not climate friendly. We have our new Needham Climate Action Plan under construction this year, and we don't meet anything, and never will be able to make them compliant to what we want to do in the town. Let's go to the next slide. So, starting in mid-2021, we've been working with our wonderful partner, the Cambridge Housing Authority. Margaret Moran is here tonight and leads the project and is also Deputy Executive Director of the Cambridge Housing Authority. And they've been working with us since 2021. The architecting firm of 2020, Bargman Henry, an architect, and a great lead team of their subcontractors have worked out a design where we can replace these 72 worn-out Linden Studio units with 136 new units. And I'm referring to this building on the right here. It says Phase 1A and 1B. It's set up that way so we can do the project in two sub-phases that minimizes the amount of temporary tenant relocation. It's going to be a 4-story building that has these the advantages of first of all providing elevators for everybody to access their apartments, but it also means that we can have 50% more green space on the site than we have now, and less hardscape on the site, which is obviously a concern in this day and age here. Over here, there's a Phase 2 building that's being planned for the future, not for this particular phase of the development. This is where those 5 Chambers Street 2-story buildings are. Over here is where the 18 1-story buildings are that will be torn down. Let's go to the next slide here. This is a typical first floor and upper floor layout. All of the units will be 575 square feet, 1-bedroom units. That's up from about 400 square feet for the studio units. So that's about a 42% increase in space, a lot more storage, a lot more comfortable, meets sort of 21st century standards for these kind of apartments. And then we're also going to be able to have 8 2-bedroom units of a decent size, 800 square feet. And that's going to give us a lot of flexibility for certain situations that come up that we haven't been able to handle. We don't have any 2-bedroom units for the elderly or disabled. And occasionally we get into a situation where we just can't offer a place to somebody because they need a 2-bedroom unit. Next slide. One of the things we will be doing is implementing a beautiful new landscaping plan so that it will fit in and be a wonderful part of the neighborhood. I'm not going to get into any details here. If anybody wants more details, there's been planning board hearings in particular where they've reviewed in much more detail the schematic design. And we are going to have it be very, very attractive here. Next slide. So here's some artist renditions, I guess AI artist renditions in this day and age of what it will look after all the landscaping goes in and the landscaping and the shrubs and trees have a few years to grow. We're looking here, we're standing looking south towards Linden Street. On our back is Oak Street, and looking and with the development on the left. Let's do the next slide. Now we're standing on the other side. We're at the corner of Sylvan and Linden Street, looking north up towards Oak Street with the playing fields there on the left and the development there on the right. There will be community gardens right in this area, very popular with our residents, and very, very good thing for them to have access to that we can now afford to put on the site because of the additional green space that we have. Next slide. So here's the first of a couple of aerial views. So we're hovering over High Rock School here in the foreground, right there, looking across the playing fields at the building of the Phase 1A, 1B building. This is what we're actually trying to do the construction funding for. And then over here will be the future Phase 2 building when we can find the money to raise to fund it here. Next slide. This is, from looking at it from the other way, so we're down over here, we're sort of hovering over Needham Junction or the Roach Brothers here in the very foreground off the slide. The school's up there at the top in the back, far out there, and here's what the building sort of looks like from the other side, and this is Linden Street, and this is Sylvan Road here. Next slide. So now let's get to the numbers here. We're not going to go through this in detail, but again, there's been other Needham committee meetings, particularly the town-owned Housing Oversight Committee, TCHOC, that has 2 or 3 meetings where they've done a dive into the numbers. The CPC, I think, as several people know, have hired a specialist, a consultant, to kind of understand the numbers, and it's very complicated. But the important thing to take away from this slide here is $2.6 million at the bottom. This is the total funding for pre-development. This is everything you do before you start construction, and we've raised all the money for that thanks to a grant that the town of Needham gave us in 2022. Thank you very much. Half of the funding came from that, about $1.4 million there. And then right here, Representative Denise Gerlich arranged for earmark ARPA money that we've also been using to fund the other half of it. And it's put us in a very strong and very unusual position of being able to complete the redevelopment planning and the schematic design, on terms that I think work for everybody in the town. And this is what, on the right-hand side, this is what the funding is being used for. Next slide, please. So on the right-hand slide, I guess the important number, both of them are supposed to be red, total uses, that means, and sources. The whole project is now costing out to be about $84 million, which is just an amazing number. But we all know how construction costs have been going up the last few years, and everything else is going up. And the most important part of this $83 million number on the right-hand side, this is how we're going to be using the funding, is the $60 million number for construction. So as a result of first doing the conceptual design and the detailed design, we've come to the schematic design level, where we have a pretty good handle of what this is going to be costing per professional cost estimators that are part of the team that work for BH&A. On the left-hand side is where, a dozen, 15 areas of where the funding is going to be coming from. We often refer to it as our financial layer cake. This is one of those amazing things that Cambridge Housing Authority has been able to use their 15 or 20 years of expertise helping us understand how to raise this kind of money. It's very difficult to do for particularly state-funded, subsidized projects like ours. And the most important line for tonight's hearing is this line that's sort of in yellow in the middle here, where it says 5.5 million, and above it, just above it, is the 1.386 million that has already been granted in 2022. And what is so important, there's really 2 ways of looking at this, which is, number one, Needham's, you add those together to about 6.8 million. Needham's CPA funding is about 7.3% of the overall $84 million budget that we have to raise. And without that money, this project would not be happening. And end of discussion, full stops, as somebody says here. So that's pretty amazing right there, and very, very important to convincing all these other funding sources that to actually pony up and help us raise the money. But the second way of looking at this is even more amazing, I think, which is, our 6.8 million is bringing in $77 million from somewhere else, but not the Needham taxpayer. It's bringing in out $77 million of investment into the town of Needham. And wow, is that a good deal? The math on that is like $11.32 of money coming in for every dollar that Needham has invested in this project. I will just close by saying, big asterisk, these are the numbers that they stand now, and they change every month. The construction numbers go up and down. These are not the numbers that will be showing this time next year. New funding sources come and some disappear. We apply for some and then we lose. It's all competitive, but it's still just great that we're here now before you tonight. So that's the project, and we really hope that the CPC and the town of Needham will support this grant.
Thank you, Rich. Questions? Anyone here have questions? No? Is there anyone online, Lauren, that has a question?
Oh, somebody was asking me to enlarge the slides, so I apologize if you were not able to see them well, but the slide presentation will be posted with the CPC meeting packet that will go on the town's website. And if you send me an email, I'm also happy to email it to you. And in terms of written comment, I did not receive anything in writing with respect to this project.
Okay. Thank you.
I guess that's some sort of news. I don't know, good news or not good news. Thank you very much for the time.
Thanks, Rich.
I'll move over to my
Okay,
committee
great.
seat over
Leave
here.
your seat for the next person. The next project is FY 2025-02, the Needham High School Tennis Court improvements. And that will be introduced by Maureen Callahan.
I'm Maureen Callahan. I'm a member of the Community Preservation Committee and one of the liaisons that was assigned to this project, along with Reg Foster. Overall, the project involves replacing the 4 tennis courts at Needham High School, which are currently cracked and unusable, and also adding in an additional 4 tennis courts next to the existing courts. The benefits are going to allow the high school tennis teams to practice at the school, freeing up space at the town courts, which they currently use. It will also allow Needham High School and the town to host tennis tournaments, which require a minimum of 5 courts. The total cost of this project is $2.6 million, but the amount being requested from this committee is $1.44 million, with the town assuming the rest of the cost. Now I'd like to introduce Stacy Mulroy, Director of Needham Park and Recreation Department, and Jonathan Charwick from Activitas, who will discuss the details of the construction of this project.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. So I just want to invite Jonathan Jarwick from Activitas. He's going to go over the presentation, and we'll be here to answer any questions for you.
Great, Stacy, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Once again, my name is Jonathan Charwick. I'm a registered landscape architect from Activitas in Dedham, Massachusetts, and I'll walk through the proposed project as part of this CPC application. So as a reference, there's 4 existing tennis courts at the high school. They're just north of the school. So actually north is page left on this existing plan. And there is to the west, a large grass area that's used for multiple activities during the school day. So the proposed renovations include reconstructing the existing 4 courts in kind. They're currently asphalt and they're proposed as post-tension concrete. New fencing, new court surfacing, and ADA walkways to those courts are part of the project. As previously noted, 4 additional courts where the existing grass area will be built, as well as post-tension concrete courts, new surfacing, new equipment, new fencing around the perimeter of those courts as well, and full ADA accessibility to those courts from the school and the parking lot. And there's also a shade structure basically between the 4 existing and 4 new that is proposed. The shade structure is a structure that's owned by the town currently, will be installed by the contractor, And underneath that shade structure is a small paved area for students, athletes, and users of the courts to get away from the shade and just have a little space outside of playing the tennis. As it relates to the proposed project cost, so the estimated cost right now for construction is $2.4 million. We also have within that budget 7.5% for construction contingency and design contingency, and then some soft costs for construction administration by our team if this project does proceed. We're currently in the permitting process, so we'll be in front of the planning board next week. And our goal is to have this project go out to bid and have hard bid numbers from contractors before town meeting. At that point, I'll either turn over to Stacy for any additional comments or any questions from the committee and the public.
I don't have much to add, but I'm happy to answer any questions. I know Mr. Gerstle is also in the room, from the chair of our commission, so he's available as well.
Joe's raising.
Yes.
Joe? Oh, I'm sorry. Hi, Joe.
Hi, Stacy, could you highlight the importance of having the additional courts rather than the 4 going up to the 8? The boys and girls tennis playing their matches and how that really helps them.
Sure, I'd be happy to. In order to host postseason play, you need to have at least 5 courts at any one site. So adding additional courts would be certainly helpful. Adding 4 more courts would allow the teams to practice together in the same spot. Right now we have one set of teams going to Mills and another set of teams going over to Newman, and their matches are broken up and last longer than they would if we have 5 courts, which means that there's less access for the residents to get on the courts during the tennis seasons.
Thank you.
Questions? Questions from anybody online, Lauren? Oh, sorry. Yep, come on up. And if you could just give your name and your address, that would be great.
I'm Drew Lawrence, 218 West Canton Street in Boston. I'm the boys tennis coach.
Oh.
So I've got 2 questions. One, and this is maybe for the developer. We originally had all of the courts in the same orientation as the old courts, and the latest plan I saw had that. So these courts were all faced this way, and I don't know why there was a change in that. But the north-south orientation is much more desirable. In regards to court use, we're able to host our postseason matches against other teams with the court situation that we have, but again, the kids are sent to different sites, and so we're not together. Mm-hmm. We don't practice together. The JV and the varsity teams don't practice together. And that's unfortunate. It's unfortunate not to be able to have all our practices at the high school. We struggle getting fans, and I think if it's at the high school, you even have kids coming back from lacrosse or baseball, and I think that's advantageous and nicer. We've got the pressure on the courts, like Stacy had mentioned. There's pickleballers that we're now, we're trying to work with them, but they want to have fun just as much as we want to have practice and our fun, and so that's another little pressure. In terms of the tournament requirements, we can't host individual tournaments, which is what we in the past have done for individual competition, unless you have 8 continuous courts. Mm-hmm. Wellesley, Newton North, Brookline, Westwood all have 8 courts. And I believe all of those, well, not all of them aren't at the high school, but clearly there's an advantage of having them at the high school. And we're using the public's courts, which are also done, there's some programming from the town with USTA and other things that we bump into when we go late, and we often go late because we have so few courts. Our matches consist of 5 matches for the varsity, and that doesn't even account for the junior varsity. So if we have 8 courts, we could have them at one site, and we still would use all of the courts for the first round, and then there would most likely be a handful of additional matches that go on after they're done. Quite honestly, the way it goes now, there are kids that are on our JV team. When we play a team that is fully loaded with players, we keep 24 kids, and there are, Newton North, Brookline, Wellesley are all teams that have at least that many. The bottom of the rosters don't get to play when they're at our site, and that's unfortunate. And I'll leave it at that. Could I forget anything?
Do you want Stacy or, I'm sorry, I forgot the gentleman's name from the design firm, to address, can you address the orientation of the tennis courts, that question?
Sure. So the new courts are generally still in a north-south orientation. That the reason they were angled is what you see is there's a concrete walkway between the courts. That concrete walkway is going to be potentially used for access to the courts for users, for spectators to either stand or set up chairs. And then the roadway that's in the back of the school is primarily offline, but through discussions with DPW, there was a desire to provide some access so that in case of emergency or some other means, access needed to occur from this roadway getting through. There was the ability to bring a vehicle or access into the parking lot. Previously, I believe the courts were angled parallel with these, and we didn't have that access. So that was a desire from DPW.
Thank you.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I'm Derek Schulman. I live at 11 Mary Chilton Road here in Needham, of course. I'm the junior varsity girls coach at Needham High. I simply wanted to affirm everything that I've heard so far. The girls are at unfortunately, a competitive disadvantage by only having 4 courts, and it's unfortunate for them. They work so hard, and the varsity coach never gets to see that because she is with the girls the varsity girls across town. And also limits our ability to do certain drills and practices, ladder play, and it's unfortunate for the girls. They have to rely so much on my reports to the varsity coach rather than let her expertise evaluate the girls, with her own skills. It's also unfortunate and frankly sometimes embarrassing when other teams have to come and do multiple bus drop-offs and wait for a single match to be finished, which can be an hour and a half, 2 hours longer. And it's not something that I've experienced in my 3 years when we've traveled to other teams in the Bay State. So not take a lot of your time, but just to affirm what I've heard previously.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Frank Flynn. I'm just a citizen consumer of tennis. And the orientation of tennis
I'm
courts
sorry,
is...
could you just give us your address, Frank?
Thank you. The
Oh, your address.
You state your address.
Of course, I'm at 47 Mellon Street in
Thank you.
Needham. The failure to orient the courts north-south is probably a bad future investment. If we're talking tournaments going down the years, those people who aren't tennis players here might know the great impact that the angle of the sun has on tennis games. And it's one, there's a pretty strict, pretty strict concept of going north-south. So I would urge that it looks difficult, I'll give you that. It looks difficult to squeeze those in north-south there. But it also doesn't look impossible. And if you really want to comply to how tennis courts are made throughout the universe, you really need to orient them north-south. So thank you for hearing me in that.
Anybody else? Yes, do you want me to read the written comments, or do you want to read them?
I'm happy to.
Okay, great, thank you.
So we did receive quite a number of emails with respect to the tennis court project, some comments, and then a question. I can display them. Do I share my screen in order to display? Yeah. You have some hands raised in the audience. Oh, perhaps we should address that before. So there's a comment here from Alice Debner. This would be terrific, not only for the student athletes. Currently, it is very hard for tennis enthusiasts like me to get a court. I will pull these up. All right. So the first comment we have is from Brooks Goddard of 59 Otis Street with respect to the Mills Field tennis courts. Has long needed a 5th tennis court so school matches can be played expeditiously. Please build that 5th court. I was the boys tennis coach at Wellesley High School and always had to wait that additional 1 to 2 hours for the 5th match to finish. Also, the pickleball competition for space at Mills is awkward, but I think giving pickleball preference 8 to 12 and tennis 3 to 7 might help. Year badges necessary for both. And pickleball can easily be played in winter months as it is done in Auburndale. Michelle Zaff wrote in to say she's strongly in favor of the tennis court improvements. They are a tennis family. She's played tennis her whole life. Her husband does as well. Her 2 daughters grew up in Needham playing tennis and graduated from Needham High School playing varsity, and one being varsity captain. The high school courts are closed now, not playable. Every other high school in the league had more courts and courts in better condition. Both boys and girls Needham High tennis teams are consistently among the top teams in the league, frequently making the state tournament. Tennis is one of the few sports that can be enjoyed by people ages 3 to 93. Funding has gone to improve soccer, lacrosse, and football, the storage house for football equipment at Memorial Field, and now the town should support the rebuilding of the tennis courts. Rosie King from 50 Laurel Drive commented that as a longtime resident and Needham taxpayer, she wholeheartedly and fully supports the committee's funding of the Needham High School Tennis Court Improvement and Construction Project. Let's give our high school players courts that are safe and usable and on school property. She has children and grandchildren who grew up in Needham, some of whom have been on the team, and she is well aware that this project is long overdue. Needham High School should have courts that are as beautiful and well-maintained as its other athletic fields. Marguerite Fallon and Robert Harrington commented that they would support repairing the tennis courts at the high school and would love it if pickleball lines could be placed on some so that courts could be utilized by the many people of Needham that play and love the sport. There's a question from Steve Gerasi asking about the lighting and if lighting will be included in the proposal. I believe it was discussed, but did it make it into the final plan?
Correct. There's no lighting as part of this application.
Afterwards, okay. Finally, let me see, Neil Barron from 38 Helen Road wrote in to say he is a Needham resident and tennis player, very excited that the town is considering building 8 courts at Needham High School. This is long overdue. Fully supports the project. Offered to share a study from the University of Georgia that outlines the positive economic impact that hosting tournaments can have on a community. Also mentioned that he has been in touch with Tom Friedman, who is the president of the Friends of Newton Tennis. For the past several years, Tom and the Friends of Newton Tennis have run the Garden City Open Tennis Tournament and would be happy to have Needham host part of the tournament on their new championship courts. Also aware that Lexington rebuilt its courts using the same technology that Needham plans to use, and the budget for Needham appears to be in line with the Lexington project. And finally, Matthew Bejan of 41 Cynthia Road wrote in, played for Needham High School varsity team for 4 years with a 3.5-year undefeated record.
and achieving 2 Mass State Championships. Congratulations. Recruited to play D1 tennis and worked for the United States Tennis Association for 4 years, so is therefore very immersed in tennis and understanding what it takes to build and construct courts. He was also the director of tennis for Needham Park and Rec for 3 years under Karen Pierce, helping to run the camp at the high school, and also conducted his Eagle Scout project, beautifying these tennis courts. He is all for adding additional courts to Needham High School, and the cost highly justifies the needs. The MIAA high school matches require 3 singles and 2 doubles to be played, which means 5 courts must be utilized. And lastly, adding in these additional courts will be very exciting for the town, allowing both varsity and JV teams to practice together, and the men's and women's teams could share the courts. He also commented that he has seen the town struggling with tennis court availability, especially with pickleball being introduced. Tennis in this area has been declining as a result. When he tries to play, 3 of the 4 courts tend to be used for pickleball, only allowing 1 for tennis. He also commented that he is an instructor at the Sportsman's Tennis and Enrichment Center, where they are currently building 4 courts, and their cost for their project is projected to be in the $3 to $4 million range, to provide some perspective.
Yes. Please. Wait. On the side. Oh, talk to. Okay.
Sorry. Okay. We'll allow Alice, you are allowed to talk.
Thank you. I did write in something because I didn't know if there would be an oral opportunity. It's hard to be off camera. I'm having technical difficulties on that. But I'm a resident, longtime resident, 33 years now, 23 Henderson Street in Needham. When I came here, it was really easy to access a court. I'm definitely a tennis enthusiast. But as other people have mentioned, with the coming of pickleball and the high school courts being out of commission, I've had to go to other towns to find courts, and I've discovered how beautiful North's courts are and Wellesley's courts and how many they have. And it's, I feel like this is really an important resource for our community to have, because, who knows when other towns will not permit people to play from Needham in their communities. But many times I've gone to try to find a court, as the gentleman who'd written in, who you just read his memo, and basically there's no opportunity to get a court at any hour of the day almost between the pickleball and the kids sports. Definitely support the kids sports. They should have an important priority, but it's really very, very hard. I'm not retired, and it's really hard. It's not like I'm just looking for one window during the day. It's really, really hard to get a court. And so I just think this could be really an important resource for those of us of all ages, not just for the kids. Thank you.
We also have a hand raised.
How about Peter? Yeah, Peter, do you want to come in?
Good evening. I'm Peter Pingator. I live on 146 Hillcrest Road, Precinct I. I recall the initial presentation on this proposal, and there was some question about the degree to which the neighbors had been engaged. And I'm wondering if the Park and Rec Committee or the other representatives of the proponent can speak to the degree to which neighbors have been engaged on this proposed plan. Thank you.
Shall we take the final question?
Do you want to let Stacy respond? Or?
I thought you wanted answers at the end.
I think
Okay.
we respond afterwards.
Jeremy, if you can unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Jeremy Chow. I'm at 96 Maple Street and a town meeting member for Precinct D. I just wanted to put in a unique perspective of feedback into this project. I'm actually an instructor of youth tennis for the Park and Rec here in Needham. And I want to personally attest to the urgency of implementing this project because the increasing enrollment and enthusiasm for youth tennis in this town is incredible. And my concern is that the quality of the courts at the high school, which is really the only space that we were able to provide those lessons, is becoming a safety issue with all the cracks and the inconsistencies in the surface that's been going over the past couple of years. So I just wanted to express personally what I've been experiencing on the high school tennis courts and the urgency of this project, other than the benefits, which are superlative for what we would do with the tennis teams. I have 3 kids in my family that have grown up through the Needham school systems, all participating in varsity tennis, and 2 of them have played D1 tennis. So my family has personally benefited from the town use of those courts, and I would love to see the town expand the use of tennis, pickleball, and any racket sports for this brand new facility, which would be very popular for the town. Thank you very much for your time.
Is there anyone else? So, if there's no one else who wants to comment, we can go back to a couple of the questions, I think, and maybe Stacy and anyone else who's involved can help. One question was lining the courts with pickleball lines. Stacy, could you address that?
Yes. We have no plans to line the high school tennis courts with pickleball lines. We have courts lined currently over at Mills, and the commission is considering a capital project in the future of standalone pickleball courts.
Thank you. And then to Peter's question about neighbor involvement in the process of those additional 4 courts, can anyone address that?
I believe, I don't know if Artie is on. Cecilia is Artie on.
Yes, he is. We can promote him. Artie, you should be able to unmute yourself.
I'm here. Can you see me?
We cannot see you, but we can hear you.
Okay, well, I don't know what's wrong with the camera, but, oh, how about now?
Nope. We cannot see you, but we can hear you.
Okay, well, maybe I can talk fast. So is this so as far as the orientation of the tennis courts we're talking about?
Artie, can you speak up just a little bit?
Hear me now?
Well,
Hello,
okay,
hello?
let's try again.
Okay, let's,
I think he wants you to repeat the question he's going to answer.
can you repeat the question?
Oh, sure, of course. The question was from someone who asked about whether the neighbors were involved in the discussion about adding the 4 courts.
We have not met with each one of the neighbors. There is a planning board meeting that we were hoping to have attended 10 days ago, but it wasn't possible due to the paperwork that town council had to provide. So we have all the neighbors are notified for the next meeting with the planning board, which is a week from now.
Thank you.
The other question had to do with lighting at the courts.
All right, there was another question.
There is no lighting being proposed for the tennis courts. The existing tennis courts don't have a lighting, and we're not proposing any new lighting at this time. And as far as the orientation of the tennis courts, we tried to respect the zoning setbacks. That's why we were trying to we had moved a little bit the orientation of the tennis courts. We didn't want it to propose the structures in violation of the zoning setbacks.
Thank you. Are we good with
I think so.
the tennis courts? Okay. The next request is FY 2025-03 DeFazio fencing improvements, and Jean McKnight is here to introduce that.
Yes, I'm Jean McKnight, member of the Community Preservation Committee. And this is a project requested jointly by the Needham Department of Public Works and the Needham Park and Recreation Department. It's for the amount of $417,000, which is expected to be the total cost of replacing primarily the fencing fabric. You know, we're talking about fences that have a black chain link and that were built about 15 years ago. And the fabric is failing in many parts of the DeFazio property. So that's the primary work. There also will be, the poles are generally in good condition that hold up the fabric. But in some cases, the railings at the top need to be replaced. And the department has got a proposal with costs for every single aspect of the project, broken down by which area, the parking lot perimeter fence, the play lot area, the Little League field, exactly what each area needs. In a few cases, the poles do need to be replaced, but mostly it's the fabric and a general refreshing and painting of the poles so the whole project, when finished, will look and will last. As everyone in Needham knows, DeFazio is highly utilized by the community. And it's not just high school athletics, it's also Park and Recreation Department programming. And as I said, 15 years old, this really needs to be fixed now. It's also for safety. You can see that some of the fences, poke out, and a kid could be injured by bumping against that broken part of the fence. And so, the fencing that would keep a car from entering the field needs to be improved so that for general safety. That's what I have to say about it, to introduce the project, and here to speak to it and present more about it, Ed Olson, the Superintendent of Parks and Forestry, would like to come to the table. Okay. Well, she said one of the fields, the McLeod softball field, is brand new. It doesn't need any new fencing. It's all set.
Good evening.
Good evening, Ed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Jean, for a great introduction. As mentioned, I'm Edward Olson, Superintendent of Parks and Forestry for the town of Needham. Thank you all for having me this evening. My sincere thanks to the CPC for the continued support over the past 12 years. I've been here many times in my 14-year career for many great and varied town projects, starting with the Greens Field and playground renovation many years ago. Since then, but not limited to, supportive designs and engineering, as well as support for new construction and renovations. From purchasing properties to building elevated boardwalks through wetlands and floodplains, CPC has supported us. Renovation of our synthetic track at Conroy Field, to our newly renovated town common, and finally our brand new state-of-the-art softball field at DeFazio, McLeod Field, as mentioned just now. The young ladies from Needham softball have waited patiently for their turn and have certainly deserved this and are so excited to get their season started in a matter of weeks. Thank you so much, and I appreciate what you do. Tonight, I am here for not so glamorous a project, but equally as valuable, as I believe, to the community. Years ago, I described our town common as our community's front yard. Well, I would describe the DeFazio Field Complex as our town's backyard. As mentioned, this town tract of land houses 2 synthetic turf fields, 1 lacrosse throwing wall, 2 baseball fields, 1 90-foot as well as 1 60-foot, 2 soccer fields, our community track, and finally, our newly renovated softball field. High school athletics, youth permit holders for soccer, softball, baseball, Needham Track Club, Girls on the Run, youth lacrosse, all call these fields home. Daily, this facility is used by members of our Charles River Arc, as well as townspeople alike. Also, there are park and rec programs that are run out of this field complex. And lastly, as mentioned, a park and rec tot lot. Truly something for everybody. No other spot is like this in town. When I arrived in my position here in town 14 years ago, I came on the footsteps of the Field of Dreams project. This amazing project paid for and gifted to the town most of what we have at DeFazio today. Yes, I said gifted. This group fundraised millions of dollars to make this reality happen. This really hit home for me and how much gratitude I had for this work to set the stage for my staff and I. We have worked hard to maintain and preserve this legacy, and quite frankly, we've never looked back. Some of you might ask why. Well, 16 years ago, the town was not in the position as it is today. This do-good project was done out of, frankly, desperation by youth sporting groups that deserved and needed better fields. At the time, the town could not provide these amenities, so these people chose to do it themselves. I mention this only to set the stage for my funding request before you tonight. With this said, I would like to share my simple, very simple PowerPoint presentation. I know I've razzle-dazzled this group before in years past, but this PowerPoint presentation is not so razzle-dazzle. I have been busy serving on a grand jury the past 3 months and been kind of doing triple duty here, so I didn't have as much time to spend on this PowerPoint, but if Lauren, if you would share that, that'd be great. This presentation will highlight some of the things that we've already discussed tonight, as well as shed some light on the specifics regarding this financial request. As mentioned, tonight I'm here for a site improvement project, a fencing improvement project. DeFazio Field, as mentioned, was, as we see it today, was a Field of Dreams project run by the Needham Sports Council. Really an amazing group that came forward with, like I said, millions of dollars to gift the town these fields as they exist today. And that was 16 years ago. And we all get old and things get old with them, and this fencing is showing signs of age. I use the example of roadways. Fence is like a roadway. The infrastructure is strong there, but the fencing fabric and the post, and as Jean mentioned, the fabric is showing signs of disrepair and bending and curling, and frankly, it's somewhat falling apart. So with that said, I'm here tonight to talk about the next steps. I think we can quickly talk about this slide, but yeah, again, I'm here to talk about the Field of Dreams project, and that kind of set the stage for what we have today. Since that project, we've made many improvements. As Jean mentioned, we newly renovated the McLeod Field, and we have a softball field coming online in upcoming weeks, where there'll be a grand opening and a ribbon cutting ceremony with Park and Rec and the Select Board and others. But for the most part, what you see is what you get, and it's really the legacy from the Field of Dreams. Primary goals are pretty simple. Protect the investments that were made in the park. As I mentioned, we have an obligation. People spent their own time and money to raise the monies to gift this beautiful field complex to the town, and it's really up to us now to carry on that legacy. As I mentioned, since I've been here 14 years, we never really look back. We just keep moving forward, and as I mentioned, with all the projects we've worked together with on past years, we continue to move forward. I think one of the things I learned from COVID is, and as a keeper of the open space in Needham, we see that people have seen the tremendous value that open space offers its taxpayers, its townspeople, its youth groups, its permit holders. Really, I think COVID, the one good thing that came out of COVID, it gave us all pause to really find out what was truly important to all of us. And I think for us, that means maintaining the open space in a manner that is fitting for a town like Needham. Sorry about this slide. I had some fancy pictures that I must not have shown up, but
They look
it was
like
going to
really
be.
interesting people.
Yeah, the proponents of this project, which was myself from representing DPW, and then, of course, Stacy from Park and Recreation. And we do have the chairman here tonight from Park and Rec as well. Planning for improvements. So as Cecilia will attest, we are always planning. That seems to be our full-time job, is we fix, we plan, and we plan again. And we're always thinking about the 5 and 10-year plans because it's important. I think Needham really does that better than any community that I've ever seen. When I go to conferences and I speak and I meet with colleagues, people are blown away with what we do. Some of my colleagues might have one field project in their lifetime. Well, it seems like every year we have a project, and good for us, especially as a resident of the town that has a family in this town, that resides in this town. So we've been planning, I guess, ever since the Field of Dreams for the next project. Advocating, obviously tonight I'm here advocating for these monies. I know that monies are tough to come by, and we all have priorities, and I hope this will be given consideration. Design, well, to get to the cost estimate, we had to do a little design work. It wasn't much for design because fortunately for us, we have a lot of on-call contracts with DPW. So when we looked at the fencing improvements, we reached out to our fencing on-call, Argus Construction, and they gave us an in-depth, detailed estimate. And one of the things I'd like to mention is the funding request is pretty detailed. However, as we know that if we don't spend these monies, we give them back to go back in the till. I think one of the things is that we never want to undercut a project. So the estimate might be a little large, and I understand that it's a lot of money for fence, but the good part is this will be publicly bid, and if the monies are not all allocated for this project, they'll be rescinded back to the CPC funds for other projects. Strategy. Strategy is if this project is accepted by you all and supported by the community at town meeting and moves forward, we'll write a bid with specifications and we'll move forward with the project. And we'll work with Park and Rec and the user groups on the timing. Obviously, we don't want to put any groups out, and we want to be mindful of how big this impact will be. And similar to our other projects, we'll make sure we get input from other groups and make sure it's done at a time that's acceptable by all, because we understand how busy this complex is. Execute. Well, that's all about Cecilia. So she and I will execute and work together with the town manager's office to, like I said, execute a bid and work out specifications and execute a contract. Thank you. Next slide, please. So, like I said, I've been here many times and I've done a lot of PowerPoints, but this is a pretty simple project. Like I said, and as Jean mentioned, it's not just aesthetics. I try to hold a high bar for my staff and I, and we uphold our, we take our responsibilities very seriously of maintaining the fields and the trees and the community, and like that, we have a responsibility to make sure things are safe. Not to say that this fence isn't safe, but if you go out there, as hundreds of people do every week, you'll find that the fencing is falling apart, and that's certainly a consideration. It's not just aesthetics, it's about functionality, and there is a safety component as well, and a security component, as Jean mentioned. In years past, we've had cars go onto fields, Cricket Field and other fields, where people have vandalized fields and driven on. So we are mindful that we do have security impacts at all these complexes, and this is no different than others. With that said, thank you for your time, and I would entertain any questions from the group. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, I'll just ask one question for clarification, because you said the written material said that you'll go out to bid quickly on this as soon as the funding is available, and get a competitive bid. You said that we work out the timing of the actual project with the users of the field. And so what do you have an idea of an anticipated timing? It looked very ambitious in the written material. And what are your thoughts now?
Sure, that's a great question. So we have a busy year ahead, spring, summer, fall, or busy season. You know, we're just about to get started with permit holders, but we have some gaps in that. Summertime, as many are aware, when school lets out, many people leave town for a couple weeks, and that's certainly an opportunity to take a couple bites of the apple. Similarly, when fall permits end in November, typically around Thanksgiving time, there are still weeks to construct and work a project like this into the winter months. So timing is always a consideration, but I think we'd be mindful and make sure that Park and Rec and I communicate to the groups and lay out a plan ahead of time. But you're right, we want to be mindful to get this done as soon as possible if it's favorably supported.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody here want to ask any questions? No? There was one email about this project. I don't know if there's anyone online that has a question?
Don't see any hands raised,
Okay.
and these questions were from earlier. They've been addressed.
There was one question that came ahead of time. Do you want me to read it?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you for your work on behalf of improving Needham's infrastructure. I'm writing with one suggestion. At DeFazio, I suggest that a streetlight be installed at the entrance off of Dedham Ave. At night, the entrance to DeFazio is poorly lit. Is it DeFazio or DeFazio?
What do you think?
I
Oh,
feel
you're
like
right,
it's
you're right.
DeFazio.
So I was in court today, and a woman asked me about, she said, is it DeFazio or DeFazio? And I said, well, I used to work with Patty Carey, and she would always correct people and say, it's DeFazio. It's Italian, and
Oh, okay.
but it's pronunciated DeFazio, I
Okay.
guess, by all of us, but it is
Okay.
DeFazio.
Okay, thank you.
I only know that from Patty, so.
Okay, thank you.
I always get that.
That explained it, actually.
Yeah.
I'm not Italian, so I just walked away. At night, the entrance is very poorly lit, which makes it difficult to see and a safety issue for both traffic driving by and cars entering and exiting. For such a high traffic location, I was surprised there was not a street light there already. Thank you for considering. This is from J.R. Drabick, 45 Colton Park. I'm not sure.
My first impression on that is that it's something the town should consider as a whole. If it's about the entrance to the entrance right there on the road, it would be more of, the people concerned about traffic safety in our community. But it does seem to be beyond the scope of the project that's been applied for. But I'm very happy to get the letter because we always want to have these considerations taken into account. If you want to comment any at all?
I think you did a great job, Gene. I mean, it's outside the project, but it's something we should all be mindful of. And I think, I don't want to speak for Mr. Gerstle, but we know that, one of the problems with DeFazio is, and I know this because I'm a coach, I just rushed in from a basketball game, so sorry about the sneakers and my tie, but we had a championship game tonight. I hope my team won. I had to leave at halftime. Hopefully they won. I don't think they did, though. I think, as a coach, my son, my daughter have been out there, all of us that have been at the fields, we know that the lights go out at 9 o'clock in the turf fields. When those lights go out, it gets dark quick, and that's a zoning planning board decision. And we've talked about this with user groups, about ending practice 10 minutes at 9 to allow for safe passage while there is still a lit complex, because when the lights go out, it's dark. So it is a good point, and it's something we should look at, and I would agree with the proponent of that question, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there questions in the Q&A or comments?
They're not, those were addressed earlier.
Okay, well, thank you.
Wow. Okay, thank you.
The next item is the increase in the community housing special reserve allocation from 11% to 22%. I can just read a quick summary, and then if anyone has any questions, there's more information.
Would you like me to display this?
Yeah, sure, that's a good idea. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'll just read the piece I think is most important. The Community Preservation Act mandates that at least 10% of annual property tax surcharges and state distribution funds be spent on actual projects or be allocated for future projects. in 3 CPA special reserves: community housing, open space, and historic resources. To ensure the town remains compliant with this statutory requirement, the CPC's practice has been to appropriate 11% of the estimated revenue for each special reserve. Since FY 2022, the CPC has elected to appropriate 22% of the estimated revenue for the community housing special reserve. The CPC took this action for a number of reasons, including anticipated requests for funding from the Needham Housing Authority. This will come as a warrant to town meeting. It's the allocation we've done for the past 2 years. There's notes up there on our revenue and reserves. If anyone has any questions about those, happy to answer them.
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay.
I'll just make one comment, which is, obviously, it's very generous of the town and the CPC to consider the 5.5 million, and that is a very big number.
Should we have a microphone closer to you?
Very big number, but there are projects that lie ahead. And so if we can replenish our piggy bank, our savings bank here, that would be great.
Thank you. So with that, I'd like to close the public hearing portion of the meeting. Do I need a motion?
Yes, I move that we close this hearing.
Second?
All those in favor? Do I have to do a roll call?
Now that Joe's here, you
Oh,
have to do a roll
Joe.
call.
Hi, Joe.
Good evening, everybody.
Joe, is there anything you'd like to say before we close the public hearing portion of this meeting? I haven't.
No, I think it was a well-run meeting. I think you did everything you had to do, and the committee was very compliant as well. So thanks for taking over while I'm away.
Oh, please, you're sorely missed. Thank you for all the notes. So, so we have to do a roll call on closing the public portion of the meeting. Where's my list of people? Well, let's see, Maureen?
Aye.
Reg?
Aye.
Keith? Aye. Dave? Aye. Paul?
Aye.
Jean?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
And the chair, co-chair votes aye. So with that, are there any updates, or is there anything else we want to talk about?
I have no
Or-
update.
No
No.
updates?
Our next meeting is on Wednesday, the 30th. Is that correct?
No. The 20th.
The 20th,
A
I'm
week
sorry.
from
Yes, the
tonight.
20th.
Yep.
20th.
Yes. Yep.
And is that back at 7 o'clock also?
Is that
here?
7 o'clock as well?
7 PM here.
Okay.
Okay.
The only reason why we were starting a couple of meetings at 7:30 was just to accommodate the chair's commitments with FinCom and Select Board.
Right.
And also why we moved to Town Hall, but generally 7 PM here.
Okay.
Oh, did you say the next meeting is going to be at 7:30?
No.
Seven.
No, 7. as
7
usual.
in this building.
In this building, okay. I just
March
couldn't
20th,
quite
yeah.
hear. Okay, great.
Okay, so can I make a motion to close the meeting?
So moved.
Oh, close the meeting, yes.
Second.
Second, okay.
Oh, I have to read again, don't I? Sorry. Maureen?
Aye.
Reg?
Aye.
Keith? Aye. Dave?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Jean?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
And the co-chair votes aye.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for all your